Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now on the phone is former Attorney General Edwin Meese. Mr. Meese served in that capacity during the Reagan administration from 1985 to 1988, an advisor to President Reagan before becoming his Attorney General. Mr. Meese was a member of the Cabinet and the National Security Council. He is currently the Ronald Reagan Distinguished Fellow Emeritus at the Heritage Foundation. And Mr. Meese, welcome.
Nice to be with you.
Well, President Obama yesterday called for a 1/3 reduction in U.S. and Russian strategic nuclear warheads. He's indicated he can bypass treaties and Congress if the Russians agree. Do you believe the president has the authority to cut the nuclear arsenal? And what should Congress do if he does this without congressional authority?
Well, I believe that he should have authority from the Congress to do this. And I am surprised, first of all, that he is doing this in his negotiations or discussions with the president of Russia, and both from a policy and security standpoint, and also in terms of, I believe, going beyond his powers. Now, it's essentially making a treaty unilaterally without going through the constitutional process of the treaty, which a president can sign, but it must be ratified then by the Senate in order to be a part of the supreme law of the land. So I have serious questions about this, about both his authority and about the effect of what this might be.
In making his remarks yesterday, the president stood before Germany's Brandenburg Gate, where 26 years ago, Ronald Reagan, a close friend of yours, delivered his famous Tear Down This Wall speech. Can you compare and contrast these two speeches for us? And would Ronald Reagan approve of President Obama's disarmament plans?
Well, I think that Ronald Reagan had a very different way of going about it. He recognized that there are dangers to the United States, and I don't believe he would have gone along with this kind of an approach, particularly since he believed that our best chance of having peace in the world and avoiding a nuclear war was to have strength. And in terms of reducing nuclear weapons, he obviously wanted to do that, but he wanted to reduce them by making them obsolete through the creation of an effective anti-ballistic missile program, which was known then as the Strategic Defense Initiative. So I think he had a very different way of going about it than the current president has.
To immigration, you were Attorney General when Congress passed the Immigration Reform and Control Act in 1986. Critics of the current immigration bill are using this as a cautionary example of the effects of legalization. Are the comparisons fair? And can you endorse the current legislation in the Senate today?
Well, I think that there are some parallels that make them similar, but today I think most people who went through the experience in 1986 recognized that it did not accomplish what it was set out to do. Ronald Reagan made a good faith attempt to follow the recommendations of a commission that had worked for several years prior to 1986, and in doing that, he specified that the first thing we needed to do was to make sure that we had secure borders, and that was an integral part of the plan. Also, there were other aspects of the plan, and our anticipation was that if all aspects of the plan, including secure borders and the prevention of future illegal aliens entering the United States, that then it would be in the best interest of the country. However, Congress refused to follow up on the secure border portion of it, and as a result, what was then estimated to be 3 million illegal aliens turned out over a period of time to be some 11 million or more today. And so I think that what Ronald Reagan would say is, which is my own analysis, and that is that we were not successful, the country was not successful because there was no follow-up in order of securing the border. And so I think it would be a mistake to make that same error today, plus the fact that the new proposal that has been conjured up by Senator Schumer, primarily as the leader and others along with him from both parties, doesn't meet the necessary criteria. It doesn't provide for a secure border. As a matter of fact, it's much weaker even than what's going on currently, or supposed to go on, in the building of a fence and so on. Secondly, it doesn't provide for improving the legal method of people becoming legitimate members of our population. And thirdly, it doesn't have the necessary aspects of it in terms of guest worker programs. And also it has many unfortunate features, such as taking taxpayer money to hire non-governmental agencies, which are, in the past, have been aiding and abetting those illegal aliens coming into the country. So I think there are a lot of problems with the current bill, and I don't think it's a way in which we protect national security, in which we prevent more illegal aliens, and indeed it's disrespecting the people who come in from other countries legally by not following proper procedures and making this, in effect, an amnesty bill, which, as I say, disrespects those who've come in legally.
You're saying this legislation would make a bad situation even worse?
I think it would make a bad situation worse and would not solve any of the problems.
Mr. Meese, the Obama administration has recently been racked by a series of scandals. Is an independent counsel or a special prosecutor needed to investigate the IRS's targeting of conservatives?
Well, I think that it would be far better to continue the hearings and making sure that the public understands what this administration is doing in these several scandals. I think that's one thing that's necessary. Secondly, I think that there ought to be after the investigation by Congress, those things that are found to be illegal should be then turned over to a prosecutorial agency, and that could be the normal criminal process, which is conducted by United States attorneys, or it could be a special prosecutor if it's felt that the Department of Justice would not be doing a fair, objective, and nonpartisan job.
All right, Attorney General Eric Holder's and the Justice Department spying on AP reporters and the criminalizing of Fox News reporter James Rosen. How do you view this? And does it appear to you that Eric Holder might have perjured himself under oath?
Well, I'll talk only about the department, and I was quite surprised, particularly in the language used in the document that was used to support the action by a judge, and that was to designate a newspaper reporter as a potential criminal. And so I think overall it was a serious mistake on the Department of Justice to, first of all, classify a reporter, particularly when they later then said they were not planning to prosecute this individual. To accuse someone of a crime and then say you're not going to prosecute in this situation seems very strange in terms of the usual processes of the department. And secondly, I think that in this case, talk about attacking, as they did, a legitimate journalist is a very strange thing for the department to do. And I think it is certainly, to say that it's a scandal is certainly an accurate depiction, as it differs so much from the normal processes.
The National Security Agency's Prism program, which gathers phone records and data of millions of Americans, the administration credits Prism for preventing some 50 terrorist attacks. However, Jim Sensenbrenner, who helped craft the Patriot Act, says that Prism is an abuse of the Patriot Act. What is your take on this, and does this program need more congressional or even judicial oversight?
Well, I believe it certainly requires the Congress to get more information than they seem to have at the present time, and there should be a thorough airing of the situation by Congress. There may be a legitimate activity by NSA, because I have great confidence, quite frankly, in General Alexander, who is the head of NSA, and they have done in the past, they have done things that are necessary to protect against terrorists, but I think I would not be satisfied until Congress has a total, thorough evaluation, and then on a bipartisan basis has made the assurance to the American people of several things. Number one, that it is necessary for our national security. Number two, that it is not do anything that is not permitted by law. and by the warrant, the search warrant that is essentially the electronic search warrant that is provided under the FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, and finally that necessary precautions have been taken to make sure that they only do what is proper, and that they do not invade the privacy of American citizens by actually looking into the content of telephone conversations. So there are a lot of things that need to happen. Number one, adequate inquiry and adequate surveillance of the whole program by Congress. Secondly, that privacy provisions are being followed. And thirdly, that all of this is properly within the law, including the sanctions, the conduct being sanctioned by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court.
Speaking of surveillance, the FBI chief recently admitted that drones are being used to spy on Americans here in the U.S. Is this constitutional?
Well, there have been a number of decisions by the Supreme Court on this subject, and I would be interested in knowing more. I think you can't make that decision until you know more, but it would appear to me that if it is utilizing an inquiry or intrusive surveillance into a person's home or into a person's property, then it seems to me you would need a specific search warrant in order to do that. So I think we need to know more about it, and it looks like it's very close to the line on what is proper and what is not proper under the Constitution and the Fourth Amendment.
The Supreme Court will soon rule on the constitutionality of the Defense of Marriage Act. How do you see the justices ruling?
Well, it's hard to say. I've been practicing law for over a half century, and I've never tried to, anymore after long observation, tried to predict what courts are going to do, whether it's traffic court or the Supreme Court. But I do hope, and I think, that if they're following the law and the Constitution, that it is proper and necessary for Congress to make certain laws as to the definition of marriage as far as federal actions and federal law is concerned. Now, states also have the responsibility for their purposes, for state law, of making determination of the definition of marriage. And many of the states have done that. And so, and that also is up before the Supreme Court along with the Defense of Marriage Act. So I think that as I read the limitations that are already in the Defense of Marriage Act, that this only pertains to how the federal government will define and utilize for federal purposes the institution of marriage, and also in the companion case where a state has made a definition of what marriage is, and that is that natural marriage is a man and a woman. That I think that if the court is following tradition, if it's following all aspects of the law up until this time, then I think that they would be able to uphold both the Defense of Marriage Act and Proposition 8 in California.
Last question, Mr. Meese. President Obama recently announced 3 nominees to the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, which is considered the second most important court behind the Supreme Court. In your view, are these quality picks or liberal ideologues? And do you expect a confrontation in the Senate over this?
Well, I think there probably will be a confrontation because unlike most nominations where the administration normally would talk about these being 3 people that are eminently qualified and so on, their allies, Senator Schumer, I believe, and others in the Senate, talked about how this was essentially a means of getting liberal, ultra-liberal ideologues onto the court in order to get President Obama's policies certified or upheld by the court. I think this is compounded by the fact that there is no need for additional judges. As a matter of fact, when President George W. Bush was in office, the Senate, in Democratic hands, specifically excluded the idea of confirming more judges to that court because they said there was not a workload that justified it, and the workload has gotten even less since that time. So I think it's by their own statements of the Democrats, it's purely a political ploy and therefore should be rejected, both for political purposes, because of its political ideological reasons, and secondly, because the new judges are not necessary.
All right, Attorney General Edwin Meese, thanks so much for being with us. It's always an honor and a privilege to speak with you.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.